Chapter 7. Shortly after 9 o'clock in the morning, after dealing with the woman and washing the flatware, Mr. Vest sets loose the dogs. At the back door, at the front door, and in his bedroom there are call buttons that, when pushed, sound a soft buzzer in the kennel behind the barn. When the Dobermans have been sent there with the word crib, as they were sent earlier, the buzzer is a command that at once returns them to active patrol. He uses the call button by the kitchen door and then steps to the large window by the dinette to watch the backyard. The sky is low and gray, still shrouding the Siskiyou Mountains, but rain is no longer falling. The drooping boughs of the evergreens drip steadily. The bark on the deciduous trees is a sodden black, their limbs, some with the first fragile green buds of spring, others still barren, are so coaly that they appear to have been stripped by fire. Some people might think that the scene is passive now, with the thunder spent and the lightning extinguished. But Mr. Vest knows that a storm is as powerful in its aftermath as in its raging. He is in harmony with this new kind of power, the quiescent power of growth that water bestows on the land. From the back of the barn come the Dobermans. They pad side by side for a distance, then split up and proceed each in his own direction. They are not on attack status at this time. They will chase down and detain any intruder, but they will not kill him. To prime them for blood, Mr. Vest must speak the name Nietzsche. One of the dogs, Liederkranz, comes onto the back porch, where he stares at the window, adoring his master. His tail wags once, and then once again, but he is on duty, and this brief and measured display of affection is all that he will allow himself. Liederkranz returns to the backyard. He stands tall, vigilant. He gazes first to the south, then west, and then east. He lowers his head, smells the wet grass, and at last he moves off across the lawn, sniffing industriously. His ears flatten against his skull as he concentrates on a scent, tracking something that he imagines might be a threat to his master. On a few occasions, as a reward to the Dobermans and to keep them sharp, Mr. Vest has turned loose a captive and has allowed the dogs to stalk her, foregoing the pleasure of the kill himself. It is an entertaining spectacle. Secure behind the screen of his four-legged Praetorian guard, Mr. Vest goes upstairs to the bathroom and adjusts the water in the shower until it is luxuriously hot. He lowers the volume of the radio but leaves it tuned to the swing music program. As he strips off his soiled clothing, clouds of steam pour over the top of the shower curtain. This humidity enhances the fragrance of the dark stains in his garments. Naked, he stands for a couple of minutes with his face buried in the blue jeans, the t-shirt, the denim jacket, breathing deeply at first, but then delicately sniffing one exquisite nuance of odor after another, wishing that his sense of smell were 20,000 times more intense than it is, like that of a Doberman. Nevertheless, these aromas transport him into the night just past. He hears once more the soft popping of the sound suppressor on the pistol, the muffled cries of terror, and the thin pleas for mercy in the night calm of the Templeton house. He smells Mrs. Templeton's lilac-scented body lotion, which she'd applied to her skin before retiring, the fragrance of the sachet in the daughter's underwear drawer. He tastes, in memory, the spider. Regretfully, he puts the clothes aside for laundering, because by this evening he must pass for the ordinary man that he is not, and this reverse lycanthropy requires time if the transformation is to be convincing. Therefore, as Benny Goodman plays 1 o'clock jump, Mr. Vest plunges into the stinging hot water, being especially vigorous with the washcloth and lavish with the bar of Irish Spring, scrubbing away the too pungent sense of sex and death, which might alarm the sheep. They must never suspect the shepherd of having a snaggle-tooth snout and a bushy tail inside his herdsman's disguise. Taking his time, bopping to song after song, he shampoos his thick hair twice, and then treats it with a penetrating conditioner. He uses a small brush to scrub under his fingernails. He is a perfectly proportioned man, lean but muscular. As always, he takes great pleasure in soaping himself, enjoying the sculpted contours of his body under his slippery hands. He feels like the music sounds. like the soap smells, like the taste of sweetened whipping cream. Life is, Vess lives. China came out of Key West darkness and tropical thunder into a fluorescent glare that stung her bleary eyes. At first, she mistook the fear that drove her pounding heart for the fear of Jim Waltz, her mother's friend. She thought that her face was pressed to the floor under the bed in his seaside cottage. But then she remembered the killer and the captive girl. She was sitting forward in a chair, slumped over the round table in the dining area off the knotty pine kitchen. Her head was turned to her right, and she was looking through a window at the back porch, the backyard. The killer had removed a seat cushion from one of the other chairs and had placed it under her head, so her face wouldn't press uncomfortably against the wood. She shuddered at his thoughtfulness. As she tried to lift her head, pain shot at the back of her neck and throbbed in the right side of her face. She almost blacked out and decided not to be in a rush about getting up. When she shifted in the chair, the clink of chains indicated that getting up might not be a choice either now or later. Her hands were in her lap, and when she tried to lift one, she lifted both, for her wrists were cuffed. She tried to pull her feet apart and discovered that her ankles were shackled. Judging by the noisy rattling and clinking that her small movements generated, there were other encumbrances as well. Outside, something as black as soot bounded across the green lawn, scampered up the steps, and crossed the porch. It came to the window, jumped up, put its paws on the window stool, and peered in at her. A Doberman Pinscher. Against her breasts, Ariel holds an open book as if it is a shield, hands splayed across the binding. She is in the enormous armchair, legs drawn up beneath her, the only perfect doll of all those in the room. Mr. Vess sits on a footstool before her. He cleans up well. Showered, shampooed, shaved, and combed, he is presentable in any company, and any mother, seeing him on the arm of his daughter, would think that he was a prize. He is wearing loafers without socks, beige cotton dockers, a braided leather belt, and a pale green chambray shirt. In her schoolgirl uniform, Ariel looks good too. Vess is pleased to see that she has regularly groomed herself in his absence as she was instructed. It is not easy for her, taking only sponge baths and shampooing her glorious hair in the sink. He constructed this room for others who came before her, none of whom was in residence longer than 2 months. Until he'd met his Ariel and learned what an engagingly independent spirit she was, he'd never imagined that he would insist on anyone staying this long. Consequently, a shower had seemed unnecessary. He had first seen the girl in a newspaper photograph. Though only a 10th grader, she had been something of a prodigy and had led her Sacramento high school team to victory in a statewide California academic decathlon. She looked so tender. The newspaper had trembled in his hands when he had seen her, and he had known at once that he must drive to Sacramento and meet her. He'd shot the father. The mother had owned an enormous collection of dolls and had made dolls of her own as a hobby. Vess had beaten her to death with a ventriloquist dummy that had a large caved maple head as effective as a baseball bat. "You're more beautiful than ever," he tells Ariel, and his voice is muffled by the soundproofing as if he were speaking from inside a coffin, buried alive. She does not reply or even acknowledge his presence. She is in her silent mode, as she has been without interruption for more than 6 months. "I missed you." These days she never looks at him but stares at a point above his head and off to one side. If he were to stand up from the footstool and move into her line of sight, she would still be looking over his head and to one side, though he would never quite be able to see her eyes shift in avoidance. "I brought a few things to show you." From a shoebox on the floor beside the footstool, he extracts 2 Polaroid photographs. She will not accept them, or turn her eyes to them, but Vess knows that she will examine these mementos after he leaves. She is not as lost to this world as she pretends to be. They are engaged in a complicated game with high stakes, and she is a good player. This first is a picture of a lady named Sarah Templeton, the way she looked before I had her. She was in her 40s, but very attractive, a lovely woman. The armchair is so deep that the seat cushion provides a ledge in front of Ariel on which Vess can place the photograph. Lovely, he repeats. Ariel doesn't blink. She is capable of staring fixedly without blinking for surprisingly long periods. Now and then Mr. Vess worries that she will damage her striking blue eyes. Corneas require frequent lubrication. Of course, if she goes too long without blinking and her eyes become dangerously dry, the irritation will cause tears to spring up involuntarily. This is the second photograph of Sarah after I was finished with her, Mr. Vess says, and he also places this picture on the chair. As you can see, if you choose to look, the word lovely doesn't apply anymore. Beauty never lasts. Things change. From the shoebox, he takes 2 more photographs. This is Sarah's daughter Laura, before and after. You can see she was beautiful like a butterfly. But there's a worm in every butterfly, you know. He places these snapshots on the chair and reaches into the box again. This was Laura's father. Oh, and here's her brother and the brother's wife. They were incidental. Finally, he brings out the 3 Polaroids of the young Asian gentleman and the Slim Jim with the bite missing. His name is Fuji, like the mountain in Japan. Vess puts 2 of the 3 photos on the chair. I'll keep one for myself to eat, and then I'll be Fuji with the power of the east and the power of the mountain, and when the time comes for me to do you, you'll feel both the boy and the mountain in me, and so many other people, all their power. It'll be very exciting for you, Ariel, so exciting that when it's over, you won't even care that you're dead. This is a long speech for Mr. Vess. He is, for the most part, not a garrulous man. The girl's beauty, however, moves him now and then to speeches. He holds up the Slim Jim. The missing bite was taken by Fuji just before I killed him. His saliva will have dried on the meat. You can taste a little of his quiet power, his inscrutable nature. He puts the wrapped sausage on the chair. I'll be back after midnight, Mr. Vess promises. We'll go out to the motorhome so you can see Laura, the real Laura, not just a picture of her. I brought her back so you could see what becomes of all pretty things. And there's a young man, too, a hitchhiker that I picked up along the way. I showed him a photograph of you, and I just didn't like the way he looked at it. He wasn't respectful. He leered. I didn't like something he said about you, so I sewed his mouth shut, and I sewed his eyes shut because of the way he looked at your picture. You'll be excited to see what I did to him. You can touch him, and Laura. Vess watches her closely for any tick, shudder, flinch, or subtle change in the eyes that will indicate that she hears him. He knows that she hears, but she is clever at maintaining a solemn face and a pretense of catatonic detachment. If he can force one faint flinch from her, one tick, then he will soon shatter her completely and have her howling like a goggle-eyed patient in the deepest wards of Bedlam. That collapse into ranting insanity is always fascinating to watch. But she is tough, this girl, surprising in her resources, good to challenge throws in. Side note, this doesn't seem like... I've read this book many times, but I haven't for many years, but it doesn't seem as familiar as it should anyway. And from the motorhome, we'll go out to the meadow with the dogs, Ariel, and you can watch while I bury Laura and the hitchhiker. Maybe the sky will clear by that time, and maybe there will be stars or even moonlight. Ariel huddles on the chair with her book, eyes distant, lips slightly parted, a deeply still girl. Hey, I bought another doll for you. An interesting little shop in Napa, California, a place that sells the work of local craftsmen. It's a clever rag doll. You'll like it. I'll give it to you later. Mr. Vess gets up from the footstool and takes a casual inventory of the contents of the refrigerator and the cabinet that serves as the girl's pantry. She has enough supplies to carry her 3 more days, and he will restock her shelves tomorrow. You're not eating quite as much as you should, he admonishes. That's ungrateful of you. I've given you a refrigerator, a microwave, hot and cold running water. You've got everything you need to take care of yourself. You should eat. The dolls are no less responsive than the girl. You've lost 2 or 3 pounds. It hasn't affected your looks yet, but you can't lose any more. She gazes into thin air, as if waiting for her voice box string to be pulled before she recites recorded messages. Don't think you can starve yourself until you're haggard and unattractive. You can't escape me that way. Ariel, I'll strap you down and force feed you if I have to. I'll make you swallow a rubber tube and pump baby food into your stomach. In fact, I'd enjoy it. Do you like pureed peas, carrots, applesauce? I guess it doesn't matter since you won't taste them, unless you regurgitate. He gazes at her silken hair, which is red blonde in the filtered light. This sight translates through all 5 of Vess's extraordinary senses, and he is bathed in the sensory splendor of her hair, and all the sounds and smells and textures that the look of it conveys to him. One stimulus has so many associations for him that he could lose himself for hours in the contemplation of a single hair or one drop of rain, if he chose, because that item would become an entire world of sensation to him. He moves to the armchair and stands over the girl. She doesn't acknowledge him, and although he has entered her line of sight, her gaze has somehow shifted above and to one side of him without his being aware of the moment when it happened. She is magically evasive. Maybe I could get a word or two out of you if I set you on fire. What do you think, A little lighter fluid on that golden hair and whoosh. She does not blink. I'll give you to the dogs. See if that unties your tongue. No flinch, no tick, no shudder. What a girl. Mr. Vess stoops, lowering his face toward Ariel's until they are nose to nose. Her eyes are now directly aligned with his, yet she is still not looking at him. She seems to peer through him, as if he is not a man of flesh and blood, but a haunting spirit that she can't quite detect. This isn't merely the old trick of letting her eyes swim out of focus. It's a ruse, infinitely more clever than that, but she can't understand it all. Nose to nose with her, Vess whispers, "We'll go to the meadow after midnight. I'll bury Laura and the hitchhiker. Maybe I'll put you in the ground with them and cover you up 3 in one grave. Them dead and you alive. Would you speak then, Ariel? Would you say please?" No answer. He waits. Her breathing is low and even. He is so close to her that her exhalations are warm and steady against his lips, like promises of kisses to come. She must feel his breath too. She may be frightened of him and even repulsed by him, but she also finds him alluring. He has no doubt about this. Everyone is fascinated by bad boys. He says maybe there will be stars. Such a blueness in her eyes, such sparkling depths, or even moonlight, he whispers. The steel cuffs on China's ankles were linked by a sturdy chain. A second and far longer chain connected by a carabiner to the first wound around the thick legs of the chair and around the stretcher bars between the legs, returned between her feet and circled the big barrel that supported the round table and connected again to the carabiner. The chains didn't contain enough play to allow her to stand. Even if she'd been able to stand, she would have had to carry the chair on her back, and the restricting shape and the weight of it would have forced her to bend forward like a hunchback troll. And once standing, she could not have moved from the table to which she was tethered. Her hands were cuffed in front of her. A chain was hooked into the shackle that encircled her right wrist. From there it led around her, wound between the back rails of the chair behind the tie-on pad, then to the shackle on her left wrist. This chain contained enough slack to allow her to rest her arms on the table if she wished. She sat with her hands folded, leaning forward, staring at the red and swollen index finger on her right hand, waiting. Her finger throbbed and she had a headache, but her neck pain had subsided. She knew that it would return worse than ever in another 24 hours, like the delayed agony of severe whiplash. Of course, if she was still alive, in another 24 hours, neck pain would be the least of her worries. The Doberman was no longer at the window. She had seen 2 at once on the lawn, padding back and forth, sniffing the grass in the air, pausing occasionally to prick their ears and listen intently, then padding away again, obviously on guard duty. During the previous night, China had used rage to overcome her terror before it had incapacitated her. But now she discovered that humiliation was even more effective at quelling fear. Having been unable to protect herself, having wound up in bondage, that was not the source of her humiliation. What mortified worse was her failure to fulfill her promise to the girl in the cellar. I'm your guardian. I'll keep you safe. She kept returning in memory to the upholstered vestibule and the viewport on the inner door. The girl among the dolls had given no indication that she had heard the promise, but China was sick with the certainty that she had raised false hopes, that the girl would feel betrayed and more abandoned than ever, and that she would withdraw even further into her private elsewhere. I'm your guardian. In retrospect, China found her arrogance not merely astonishing, but perverse, delusional. In 26 years of living, she'd never saved anyone, in any sense whatsoever. She was no heroine, no mystery novel series character with just a colorful dash of angst and a soupçon of endearing character flaws and otherwise the competence of Sherlock Holmes and James Bond combined. Keeping herself alive, mentally stable, and emotionally intact had been enough of a struggle for her. She was still a lost girl herself, fumbling blindly through the years for some insight or resolution that probably wasn't even out there to be found, yet she stood at that viewport and promised deliverance. I am your guardian. She opened her folded hands. She flattened her hands on the table and slid them across the wood as if it smoothing away wrinkles in a tablecloth, and as she moved, her chains rattled. She wasn't a fighter, after all. No one's paladin played. She worked as a waitress. She was good at it, piling up tips, because 16 years in her mother's bent world had taught her that one way to ensure survival was to be ingratiating. With her customers, she was indefatigably charming, relentlessly agreeable, and always eager to please. The relationship between a diner and a waitress was, to her way of thinking, the ideal relationship because it was brief, formal, generally conducted with a high degree of politeness, and required no bearing of the heart. I am your guardian. In her obsessive determination to protect herself at all costs, she was always friendly with the other waitresses where she worked, but she never made friends with any of them. Friendships involved commitment, risks. She had learned not to make herself vulnerable to the hurt and betrayal that ensued from commitments. Over the years, she'd had affairs with only 2 men. She had liked both and had loved the second, but the first relationship had lasted 11 months and the second only 13. Lovers, if they were worthwhile, required more than simple commitment. They needed revelation, sharing, the bond of emotional intimacy. She found it difficult to reveal much about her childhood or her mother, in part because her utter helplessness during those years embarrassed her. More to the point, she'd come to the hard realization that her mother had never really loved her, perhaps had never been capable of loving her, or anyone. And how could she expect to be cherished by any man who knew that she'd been unloved even by her mother? She was aware that this attitude was irrational, but awareness didn't free her. She understood that she was not responsible for what her mother had done to her, but regardless of what so many therapists claimed in their books and on their radio talk shows, understanding alone didn't lead to healing. Even after a decade beyond her mother's control, China was at times convinced that all the dark events of all those troubled years could have been avoided if only she, China, had been a better girl, more worthy. I'm your guardian. She folded her hands on the table again. It keeps saying I'm your guardian in italics, but it doesn't indicate that she's talking to Abriel. She folded her hands on the table again. She leaned forward until her forehead was pressed to the backs of her thumbs, and she closed her eyes. The only close friend she'd ever had was Laura Templeton. Their relationship was something that she had wanted badly but had never sought, desperately needed but did little to nurture. It was purely a testament to Laura's vivaciousness, perseverance, and selflessness in the face of China's caution and reserve, a result of Laura's dear heart and her singular capacity to love. And now Laura was dead. In Laura's room, under the dead gaze of Freud, China had knelt beside the bed and whispered to her shackled friend, "I'll get you out of here." Gosh, how it hurt to think of it. "I'll get you out of here." Her stomach knotted excruciatingly with self-disgust. "I'll find a weapon," she had promised. Laura, selfless to the end, had urged her to run, to get out. "Don't die for me," Laura had said, but China had answered, "I'll be back." Now here came grief again, swooping like a great dark bird into her heart, and she almost let its wings enfold her, too eager for the strange solace of those battering pinions, until she realized that she was using grief to knock humiliation from its perch. Grieving, she would have no room for self-loathing. Although the clerk had never fired the revolver, she should have checked it. She should have known somehow, some way. Though she could not possibly have known what Vess had done with the bullet, she should have known. Laura had always told her that she was too hard on herself, that she would never heal if she kept inflicting new bruises on the old and endless self-flagellation. But Laura was dead. China's humiliation festered into shame. And if humiliation was a good tool for repressing terror, shame was even better. Steeping in shame, she knew no fear at all, even though she was in shackles in the house of a sadistic murderer, with no one in the world looking for her. Justice seemed served by her being there. Then she heard footsteps approaching. She raised her head and opened her eyes. The killer entered from the laundry room, evidently returning from the girl in the cellar. Without speaking to China, without glancing at her as if she didn't exist, he went to the refrigerator, removed a carton of eggs, and put it on the counter beside the sink. He deftly broke 8 eggs into a bowl and threw the shells in the trash. He set the bowl in the refrigerator and proceeded to peel and chop a Bermuda onion. China hadn't eaten in more than 12 hours. Nonetheless, she was dismayed to discover that she was suddenly ravenous. The onion was the sweetest scent that she had ever known, and her mouth began to water. After so much blood, after losing the only close friend she'd ever had, it seemed heartless to have an appetite so soon. The killer put the chopped onion into a Tupperware container, snapped the lid tight, and placed it in the refrigerator beside the bowl of eggs. Next, he grated half a wedge of cheddar cheese into another Tupperware container. He was brisk and efficient in the kitchen, and he seemed to be enjoying himself. He kept his work area neat. He also washed his hands thoroughly between each task and dried them on a hand towel, not on the dish towel. Finally, the killer came to the dinette table. He sat across from China, relaxed and self-confident, and college boy casual in his Dockers, braided belt, and soft chambray shirt. Shame, which had seemed on the verge of consuming her, instead had burned itself out for the time being. A strange combination of smoldering anger and bitter despondency had replaced it. "Now," he said, "I'm sure you're hungry, and as soon as we have a little chat, I'll make cheese omelets with stacks of toast. But to earn your breakfast, you have to tell me who you are, where you were hiding at that service station, and why you're here." She glared at him. With a smile, he said, "Don't think you can hold out on me." She would be damned rather than tell him anything. "Here's how it is," he said. "I'll kill you anyway. I'm not sure how yet. Probably in front of Ariel. She's seen bodies before, but she's never been there at the moment itself, to hear that last scream and the sudden wetness of it all." China tried to keep her eyes on him, show no weakness. He said, "However I choose to do you, I'll make it a lot harder for you if you don't talk to me willingly. There are things I enjoy that can be done before or after you're dead. Cooperate, and I'll do them after." China tried unsuccessfully to see some sign of madness in his eyes, such a merry shade of blue. "Well, you are a sick son of a bitch." Smiling again, he said, "The last thing I expected you to be was tedious." "I know why you sewed shut his eyes and mouth," she said. "Ah, so you found him in the closet. You raped him before you killed him, or while you killed him. You sewed his eyes shut because he'd seen, sewed his mouth shut because you're ashamed of what you did, and you're afraid that even dead he might tell someone." Unfazed, he said, "Actually, I didn't have sex with him." Liar. "But if I had, I wouldn't have been embarrassed. You think I'm that unsophisticated? We're all bisexual, don't you think? I have the urge for a man sometimes, and with some of them I've indulged it. It's all sensation, just sensation." Maggot. I know what you're trying to do, he said amiably, clearly amused by her, but it just won't work. You're hoping one insult or another will set me off, as if I'm some hair-trigger psychopath who will just explode if you call me the right name, push the right button, maybe insult my mother, say nasty things about the Lord. Then you hope I'll kill you fast in a wild rage and get it over with. China realized that he was right, although she had not been consciously aware of her own intentions. Failure, shame, and the helplessness of being shackled had reduced her to a despair that she had preferred not to consider. Now she was sickened less by him than by herself, wondering if she was a quitter and a loser, after all, just like her mother. But I'm not a psychopath, he said. Then what are you? Call me a homicidal adventurer, or perhaps the only clear-thinking person you've ever met. Maggot works better for me. He leaned forward in his chair. Here's the thing. Either you tell me all about yourself, everything I want to know, or I'll work on your face with a knife while you sit there. For every question you refuse to answer, I'll take off a piece, the lobe of an ear, the tip of your pretty nose, carve you like Scrimshaw. He said this not threateningly, but matter-of-factly, and she knew that he had the stomach for it. I'll take all day, he said, and you'll be insane long before you're dead. All right. All right, what? Conversation or Scrimshaw? Conversation. Good girl. She was prepared to die if it came to that, but she saw no point in suffering needlessly. What's your name? He asked. And I'm going to pause for the moment because my phone battery is almost dead. So I'll continue after I charge it.